A little bit about evolving consumer trends. I think that when you think about market and design, I really think that there's a lot of trends in the next years that's going to have an impact and a change in how we look at design and how products are going to be designed. And I'm especially thinking about trends of being more environmental friendly, adopting an environmental friendly lifestyle. It doesn't mean we have to sacrifice. It doesn't mean we have to, walk around in sandals that hurt and all this type of stuff. We can have a great lifestyle. We can have a better lifestyle than we have today, and it can be environmental friendly. And that's where it's up to the designers and the companies, the people who create these products to actually just do that and deliver it to the consumer. And that's where the market opportunity comes in. I think new technologies and infrastructure is going to have a big impact, whether it's the infrastructure on cars or how we communicate. And of course, technology is always moving things forward. We have seen that specifically in the last couple of years. I just came back from China, as I said. I think the emerging markets such as China will have an impact on the type of products we will buy. And what I mean by that is we'll have an impact on the type of products we are offered, because a lot of products in the future will be designed with the emerging markets in mind, because that is a fact that China will, for instance, when we talk about the car industry, probably be this year the biggest luxury car market in the world, overtaking America as the biggest luxury car market. Now, hopefully that doesn't mean we all have to drive around tiny, small luxury cars, don't worry. In China, they also like big luxury cars. But I do think there's going to be certain elements and certain design themes that we're going to start seeing, and it'll have a certain impact. Right now, the good news is that a lot of the European and American style do have an impact in China. I think in the end here, design as differentiation is a very, very strong point, because today, most products we expect to have a certain quality. And I think the days are over where people went out and chose a product because the other part, they knew it didn't work and this one worked. Today we expect when we buy something, it's going to work. So when we buy something, if you think about when you buy something, a lot of time it is in the beginning something that attracts you visually. And that means that to differentiate yourself from all your competitors, you need to have visually strong design. And I think you see it in this shop in here. I think you see it with a lot of great design around the world. I think that America and Denmark, when you talk about these two countries, the one thing that they unite really well, I think, is Denmark's feel for innovation and actually pushing the boundaries when it comes to design. And I think America's innovation and pushing the boundaries, not only for design, but actually to make the things happen. It is a fact that in America, and the reason I'm here and started my company here is because this is where it was possible to make it happen. I would probably not have been able to make this happen in Denmark or Scandinavia, not being able to raise the money, getting people excited, open up new markets, let alone, specifically in California, is really a place where people dare taking a chance on a new brand. If they think it's cool, they'll buy it. And I think that's the cool thing about being here in California and America. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Are you okay on the car's air conditioned? They run on the electricity?
The air-conditioned electricity in the car?
Yeah.
Yes, because everything in this car was electric air conditioned, electric power steering, so everything has to be electric, so everything worked. And because it had a gasoline engine, if you would need extreme air conditioning, maybe instead of having 50-mile range, you would have 40-mile range, when you run out of battery, automatically the gasoline engine turns on and charges the battery while you drive.
I was just wondering, talking about design and markets and timeless design, like you mentioned, and using your automotive car as an example, I was wondering why so many car companies go to different methods for the gear shift. Like you mentioned, you use the pyramid. When I picture driving and what people really enjoy about driving, like you said, I think the gear shift is kind of like it's something that everybody really loves. So what's the reasoning behind trying to make that a different experience?
Well, the question is about the gear shift, and of course all of us have grown up with hearing the different engine revs and changing gears, and even if you have an automatic gearbox, you still hear it changes gears. What happens when you move into electrification of the automobile is, specifically at the moment, because the electric motors have so much torque, you don't really need to shift gear as much. And one of the things that's happened in the car industry over the last 50 years is that the car makers have tried to make specifically automatic gearboxes so smooth that you didn't feel the gear shift, but you still feel it. Now with electric cars, it is so smooth that you don't feel it, because actually there's no gear shift. It just accelerates from 0 to 125 miles an hour in one gear. So you don't feel anything. Now, so to your point about the excitement, I believe that we have to find other ways to create this excitement with the car. It doesn't necessarily have to be the gear change. I also believe that if we want to be able to drive a cool car with a manual 6-speed gear shift and maybe a V8 in 20 years, we are going to have to get a majority of us into emission-free cars when we sit in a traffic jam on the way to work, down Santa Monica Boulevard, or wherever it is we live, because reality is we can't afford this pollution. And like I said, just came back to China, where in Beijing, the air pollution was 850 times more than it was recommended for health reasons, which means you basically got people dying of just the pollution, you know, right there. And you can't even see the sun the whole day. Even though theoretically there's blue sky, you can't see the sun. So obviously, realities need to do something. So I think that if we can get more and more people into, whether it's, doesn't necessarily have to be full electric cars, but electric cars which can drive electric to and from work and take a lot of that pollution away, that gives us the option to have fun sports cars as well. Because you don't need to necessarily sit in your fun sports car when you're sitting in that traffic jam going 20 miles an hour. And also there's a lot of people who don't necessarily want a fun sports car, so they end up in a normal gasoline powered car making a lot of pollution for no specific reason. So I also think that what we today feel is great about a noise of an engine is something that we have got used to. And there's no reason we can't get used to other things. Just like we were used to buttons on our phone. And now you get phones with no buttons on it. And I also think when the people 100 years ago took a horse carriage and they put the first engine on and they turned that engine on, I don't think people stood around and clapped and said, that sounds so great, that engine. I actually think they probably missed the horses for many years, and then they got used to the engine. So I think it's just a matter of, we're in a big transition period. I think the car will change a lot in the next 5 years. I think everybody that are here are going to experience the biggest change in the car industry ever.
In your original designs with BMW and Aston Martin, you had a market for those cars. You had a built-in market for them. When you went on your own to do the Karma, you had no market. You had to create a market. Right? There was no demand for a luxury hybrid or luxury vehicle market as there is today. And you started this many, many years ago. When you design the car, do you take, as a designer, do you take more risk in your design when you're trying to design a product when you don't have a market? Or do you try to be more conservatively design and hopefully the market then expands into your design?
No, I think the question really is about the market with an existing brand and a market with a new brand. And I think it's a very good question, because I would say with an existing brand, you can actually take less risk unless you really want to expand dramatically. Because a lot of people today, specifically with very good brands, they tend to go back to this brand that they had, let's say with a car, they had this type of car last time and they were happy with it, so now they buy the same type of car with a new model. In fact, really good car brands, people will forgive when that brand make a bad car. They will still buy it and go, you know, I kind of like this brand, they're always so good, so I'll buy it anyway. That's one of the reasons that you see so many ugly cars for famous brands, and you wonder, why do people buy that? Well, because they bought the last one that was kind of good, and then even though it's kind of ugly, they still buy it because it's a great brand. Now, with a new brand, you can't afford to have an ugly car for the first car, then nobody will buy it. You can't even afford to have a car that's just as good as the other ones, because then why would you change? So you do have to take that risk of creating something that is so unique so special that you get that woman or that guy that has bought that same type of car brand for the last 5 or 10 years. Why would that person suddenly change and take that risk? So it has to be unique. And with the Fisker Karma, there's a combination of course, the technology, but also the design. And you know, there's a lot of stories right and left about what is success and what is not, and how many cars should you sell. But the fact is that the Fisker Karma sold more than 2,000 cars in the first 8 months when it was in the market, which were more than what, let's say, Maserati sold in those 8 months. So for a new car brand, that was quite unique and amazing. However, when we then talk about market, specifically in the car industry, 100 million for marketing is nothing. And for a new car company, you know, you don't even have that. So you're in a very, very difficult market. And one of the reasons you haven't seen a lot of new car companies coming up is partly because of marketing, but also because there's so much certification and regulation that costs hundreds of millions of dollars. So that particular market is very difficult. I think when you talk about design of other things like watches and chairs, it's a little bit easier to get into these type of markets. Or if you're talking about an ice cream shop or a bakery, because you don't necessarily have to invest hundreds of millions, but you probably still are in this, you still have this challenge of marketing if you want to expand and become really big. And it's one of the difficult, as much as the American market is extremely exciting, it is also the one most difficult markets in the world because it is very much, I don't want to call it controlled, but it's definitely, you know, the big companies here that I established, they have so much power because they have created such a huge market for themselves that they can afford to spend hundreds of millions in marketing that really silence everybody else. So it's very, very difficult to pop up.